I did. I think I really did yell, "I'm devastated." They all make fun of me for being devastated.
But the cold will never be a problem.
The cold was never a problem? Is that what the question?
You never said something about, until now, about the temperature of the water that is not hot in China.
Yeah, the water temperature was really warm for that time of year. It was like 17, 18 C. And it was not a problem. I didn't even think about it. There was a brief period when I was like throwing up at the start of lap number 3 when I was just really sick and my nutrition was depleted and I was dehydrated that I felt a little bit cold. But once the sun came back up and I got my calories back in and I started eating M&Ms, I felt fine. So the whole time I wasn't cold. And you know, there's pictures of me at the end where people are putting towels and dry robes over me, and I'm like, I'm fine. I'm not even cold. So it was okay. It was not. It was very comfortable temperature. We got lucky with the weather and the water temp because sometimes by September it is much colder, but it stayed warm for a long time. So it was a present that I got. I have more stories. Who wants to ask questions?
So, to arrive, so always about any point is always about the train. So you arrived to have 120 kilometers made in a week.
Mm-hmm.
This is your starting point here before. And how many days did you stay quiet before the swim?
I usually only rest about 2 weeks before a swim. So, you know, I go up and then I come down a little bit. 60 kilometers a week is about where I kind of like to hold. So I kind of bounce around between 60 and 120, kind of go up and down a little bit. And so kind of leading up to like the last month, I was kind of going back down. So, you know, I'd get down to 60 and then I'd go to 40 and then to 20. And then just like the 2 weeks leading up, maybe just like 30 minutes a day and not even really tracking exactly how far, just to like rest and recover. I do believe when you're tapering and resting, you still have to get your heart rate up. So like in the daily swims, you know, like a long warm up and then a middle part where I'm swimming really hard and like sprinting and then a long warm down. And just do that until the tide says you get to go. That's what it's hard for the English Channel because you don't know exactly when you'll swim, so you can't taper too much too early, or else you'll lose your fitness. Something like this, where you know the exact day and the exact time, you can be much more precise with it. You guys are quiet.
A lot of regulations about swimming because it's dangerous because of the ships, I think. And what are the regulations you have to follow so that when you determine I want to swim at this day, or do they tell you you have to swim at this day?
Yeah, that is kind of the nice thing about the English Channel is that the boat captains are very experienced and they know all the rules. And so all you do is you just do what your boat captain tells you and then you're fine. But there are a lot of rules from France. So they limit how many boats can come in and how many channel swimmers can be out. And so you do, like the boat captains have to talk amongst themselves to make sure not too many people don't go out on a certain day. But when you're planning an English Channel swim, they give you a window. So you get 8 days basically, and they give you a slot number of priority. So the earlier you book, you can have like a slot number 1 during these 8 days, and that's the slot that you want because then you have priority if the weather is good. And so the boat captain tells you, okay, it's your turn, and then you just show up. And they direct you and they check your passport and all of that stuff. Sometimes the French Coast Guard does board boats and like checks for passports. That happens. So you have to have your passport, all your crew has to have their passport because you are going to France. But yeah, I don't, other than that, and they don't like it when you start in France. So like back a long time ago, you started in France and swam back to England, but they don't do that anymore because the French government doesn't like it for some reason. I don't know.
Maybe because it's called the English Channel and not French Channel.
He said it's because it's called the English Channel, not the French Channel.
Would you make others long swim?
Am I going to do other long swims? Yes. Tomorrow, 3K. I'm doing, just in like 3 weeks, I've got a 25-mile swim, kilometers, 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers. 25 miles is 40 kilometers. Yes? Okay. So in like, not even 2 weeks, 40 kilometer swim in California, and it'll be cold, like 12C. So that's coming up. That's not super far though. Otherwise, I don't know. I would love to do another 168, 170 kilometer swim somewhere, but there's no plans. Maybe the Mediterranean, I don't know. Somewhere warm, happy. If anyone has ideas, I'm open to ideas. Not in a lake though. Saltwater.
Like around Sicily.
That's a good spot. I don't know if that's far enough. Around Sicily, he said. Is it far enough? I have no idea.
Google Maps.
Okay, I know. Google Earth is my friend. Okay. It's bigger than I thought then. Maybe I was thinking Tunisia. Sicily. I'll look it up. I know where it is. To be clear.
So the next record is in a sea, is not in a lake.
Yes, the next one will be in a sea.
A continuous one segment.
Yes, no current. It's hard to find ocean that doesn't have a major current.
Or at least neutral. I mean,
Yes.
you can have something positive and then negative.
Yes. It's hard to find that. All the islands in the Caribbean have a current that goes one direction.
And they are the water is very warm.
Too warm, yes.
Yeah, 41 degrees.
It's hot.
Yeah.
41 degrees is hot.
Did you take mouthwash water during the English Channel?
Yes.
You took, right?
Yes.
And you dilute it with water?
He's asking about how I deal with salt mouth from the salt water. 800, that's too far.
You can do it.
Yeah.
Yes, when I swim in salt water, I dilute mouthwash in water, and every 30 minutes I wash my mouth out, and it helps, but it doesn't. At some point, it stops helping. No. Anybody else? Irish?
Who came
Questions?
on the boat?
No? You know everything.
He was asking who was crewing the boat.
Who came with you in the boat?
Who came on the boat? My regular suspects. The normal people. So I have a few people that have been on like Lake Powell and Lake Champlain that are good friends, good swimmers. So it's a hard, because I can only have 5. So it's hard to pick 5 perfect people to come on, but I found them. So my husband always comes on my swims. He's not a swimmer. He does not know how to swim. And so he's very brave to come with me. We're always worried he's going to fall over, and I have to rescue him. So my husband always comes, and my mom likes to come. She gets very violently seasick. So after the English Channel, I think we decided she's not coming anymore because it's hard for me to know that she is suffering. She does better on lakes than she does in oceans, and so we hadn't put her in the ocean for a while, and they were very worried about her. She had a patch. She was taking stuff. She was very sick, so she's not coming anymore. And then the other three were good friends. So they had all swum the English Channel before. They'd all had their Triple Crown. So they were all three really good swimmers. I think all three had done ice miles, so they were good. And they were amazing, those three. They pace swam with me a lot. So the rule is someone can swim for an hour, and then they have to take a break for an hour, and then someone else can swim for an hour, and then they take a break. And so all 3 nights that I swam, they rotated. And so between the 3 of them, I joke that they probably did a relay across the English Channel. They swam so much with me, because they were in the water a lot, which was really, really helpful. I do okay during the day, but sometimes at nighttime, especially like on night 2 and night 3, things get a little rough. And so they were really, really good about keeping me company.
Talking with you? Or?
Yeah, just nice to have some company at 3 in the morning when you're really tired. Though at hour 48, my friend Craig got in, and apparently I was stuck in a current. And he got in, and he said, "Hey, you're stuck in a current. You have to sprint." And so he got in, he sprinted with me for about an hour at hour 48 in the swim. And then 2 hours later, Elaine got in and said, "Hey, you've got about a 10K left." And I thought I maybe had like 2 or 3 kilometers left. And so I got mad, and so I sprinted with Elaine too. And she got out, and she was like, "That was hard work." And then at the very, very end, the tide was changing again. So at hour 53, Carl got in, and he said, "The tide's changing, you have to sprint again." And I knew he was tired, and I was like, "All right, Carl, we're gonna race." And so I made him race me into the water, or into the shore. And so like, if you've seen videos, he was the one swimming in with me, and he was cheering and like yelling at me from the water for the last hour. But sometimes you need friends if you have to sprint at hour 54, just in case you're curious. You can't do that on your own.
And at what time were you convinced that you will make it?
He asked, when was I convinced that I was going to make it? Truly, I did not know that I was going to make it until I saw the ground. All night on lap number 4 of the English Channel. So I don't know if anyone has seen the track, but laps 1 and 2 and 3, really consistent, right? The time was between 11.5 and 12.5 hours for all 3 laps. When we came off the cap at the end of lap number 3 to start lap number 4, everything was according to plan. And so I thought I had 12 hours left. But when we got to like 12 hours, that was when I knew that like something's not right here. And so I started to get worried because I knew something wasn't going right. But they can't tell you that when you're in the boat, you know, like, hey, the tides are changing. Like, I just didn't know. And so there's a big red light that you can see from the ocean. And I had looked at it the whole night prior, you know, coming back on lap number 2. But now on lap number 4, sometimes it would be like way to my right, and then a couple hours later it was like way to my left. And so I was very confused as to like where I was and what was happening, and I'm tired, so I'm not thinking straight. And then the sun kind of starts to come up, and like the sun shouldn't have been coming up. I should have been finished at like between 2 and 4 in the morning. And so I asked, like, how much farther do we have? I don't normally ask that, so it was a big question. And they said, I don't know. And I was like, what? And Kevin Murphy, who's the king of the channel, he was my observer on the boat. And he's like, they're not lying to you. We don't know. And that was hard because then I didn't know. And so then I'm thinking like, well, what if I can't get in? Like, the tides are probably going to be changing. I've been swimming a long time. Like, what happens if the current changes? Like, do I have to swim 12 hours up and down the coast before I can break through? So there's a lot of things that I was confused about in the last couple of hours. And so I wasn't looking up. I quit looking up because I could kind of look up and see, but then things weren't where they were supposed to be. And it wasn't getting closer, right? And normally I don't look up, but when you've been swimming for 50 hours, you start to look up. And it was very confusing and disorienting. And so it wasn't until Carl jumped in and said, if you sprint an hour, I think we can get through. And so I'm sprinting, but I was not looking. I had my head down. I was only looking at the boat. You know, the boat crew was all cheering for me. The observers were cheering. And so that was all I was looking at. And I didn't have any idea where I was. Like, I was just swimming as hard as I could. And so I hadn't looked up. And then all of a sudden, there was rocks. And so I crawled out and I had to ask, where am I? And someone was like, you're on Shakespeare Beach. And I'm like looking around like, I've been to Shakespeare Beach. I know that I should recognize this, and I did not recognize it at all. But that's, so yeah, I had no idea until I was on land, like, whoa, that happened.
I think I saw some pictures of you in TV. And how did they know that you will be there? Or was it from the boat?
Yeah, there was a tracker on the boat, so they were kind of following it live. But I guess, and people on my boat were like messaging back to people on land and saying, okay, we think we're going to land here, but then it changed a couple times. So there was like a group of people. They went one place and then they had to go back, and then they went back, and then I think they maybe went back another time trying to like figure out where I was going to land. Because at one point I was going to go straight into Dover Harbor and like land in there, which would have been really cool. But the tides were changing, so Shakespeare Beach is like literally right on the other side of the harbor. And so they just took me straight there because that was a guaranteed shot. But yeah, there was a lot of people there, and I was not expecting that. There was camera crews and just a crowd, and it was very like, whoa, because there's never anyone at the end of a swim, right? You know, I've never had a crowd before, and I was just not expecting it. Maybe a couple of people I thought would have been following and come to see it. Yeah, no, there was a lot of people, and they brought me M&Ms and champagne, and yeah, and were asking me questions, and who knows what I said. So it was definitely an adventure.
I saw it in the news.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah. Well, the creepy part was the